But about 4 years ago, I started a meditation practice in earnest, and I was really wanting to get messages and guidance in my meditation practice. And one of the first messages I got clearly, one of the first things I heard was, "You're done with the meat." And that was the guidance I got in my meditation. And I was like, oh, that must be meant for someone else.
Somebody else's psyche is coming in here.
Yeah, I have a freezer filled with grass-fed beef that I just bought from a neighbor. And no, I'm really cool with eating meat, and that's not for me. However, I wanted to honor this guidance. And that weekend, I just happened to be going to LA.
And I'm really excited today to have Madeleine on the call. And Madeleine is actually my own editor for my memoir book that I'm working on and a few other projects that I'm working on. And Madeleine is actually a book coach. She's a book mapping coach, which is a very unique thing that she does. She's a phenomenal editor. She works with people who have compelling stories. Let's just put it that way. That's kind of mild. Actually, we have really crazy stories, and Madeleine is the kind of coach that knows how to handle it with grace. You've been plant-based for quite a while, and so Madeleine, welcome, first of all, to my podcast, my YouTube podcast. Tell us a little bit about your journey into going from a meat-eating person, if you've ever been one, into being plant-based.
Yes, well, I have definitely been one, and a eating person, that is. And first, thank you so much. It's lovely to be here with you. I have always been really interested in food and experimenting with food and how it makes you feel. And my brother was a real foodie at a young age, and was quite a mentor to me without knowing it. I just used to steal books from his room about like Diet for a Small Planet and Whole Earth News and all these things. So I started devouring information about food when I was a kid. But it wasn't until and I tried every kind of eating plan there was known to man or woman. But about 4 years ago, I started a meditation practice in earnest, and I was really wanting to get messages and guidance in my meditation practice. And one of the first messages I got clearly, one of the first things I heard was, "You're done with the meat." And that was the guidance I got in my meditation. And I was like, oh, that must be meant for someone else.
Somebody else's psyche is coming in here.
Yeah, I have a freezer filled with grass-fed beef that I just bought from a neighbor. And no, I'm really cool with eating meat, and that's not for me. However, I wanted to honor this guidance. And that weekend, I just happened to be going to LA and just happened to have reconnected with an old friend who just happened to be like the plant-based guru, taught at Whole Foods, led classes, was a coach for people who were transitioning to plant-based eating. And I just happened to be going to stay with her for the weekend and had this feast of experience just with eating that weekend. And it was just everything kind of lined up in those few days. Talked to my husband about what I had been thinking about, and he was on board. So we just made the switch really quickly and haven't gone back.
That's incredible. So your husband jumped on board right away, because I know a lot of times, like in my own relationship, Karen has yet to go 100% plant-based. Actually, today she's starting. She committed for 30 days that I could cook everything. She would eat everything that I cooked, and she would do 100% plant-based. And so far, not too much complaining, which is really great. But
that's awesome.
The fact that your husband got on board right away is pretty phenomenal. What did you find to be some of the greatest impacts in your life as a result of going plant-based?
For me, and what I think is deepens and deepens and deepens, and even knowing I was going to have this conversation with you today made me really present to everything that's happened and re-up how I feel about it. So I appreciate just having a conversation, because it made me, you know, how when you just like, why do I do that? It's so automatic now. But the biggest thing for me is all around being conscious and present. I lost a few pounds. My belly isn't as, you know, jelly belly as it was. But I don't have a dramatic before and after. You would look at me and like, well, you kind of look the same. But I feel when I'm with people, so much more present, so much more conscious. I feel like I don't space out around nourishing myself or mindlessly eating. It's really hard to do comfort food in the way that I might have used to. Even I always ate really well, but I can just say I was asleep at the wheel with mindless eating. And this way of eating and this way of living just makes me feel awake. And I can't tell you how amazing that is. And I like you, I work with clients, and connecting and listening to my own intuition and being able to hear where they're really at is so important to me. And I don't think I could do it with a whole lot of cheese or hot wings in my.
Well, you know, it's so interesting about what you say about consciousness, because since going plant-based, and I'm coming up on 6 months now, but since I've gone plant-based, it's like I can actually hear the animals. Like when I walk by the meat department in a store, and some people might think that's crazy, but I can actually hear the crying and the pain. And, you know, it's like I'm trying not to be judgmental on other people, because it took me until I was 64 to make the change. Yeah. And so as you look at the consciousness and what you do in your personal life, in your business, how has it impacted the way that you do work with your clients, and how you are able to more fully be present in your business?
Well, I just feel, and I would love to go back to feel like what it felt like before. I think I can't quite get it in my memory, but I feel like I would be sitting with you and thinking of the next thing I was going to say, and scrambling in my mind and relying on my intellect. Or I would have crammed before we met to come up with some interesting things to say.
To be profound.
To be profound. And I feel like I do that. I still, you know, old habits die hard. I'm sure I still do that at certain points, but to me, it feels like I just trust a lot more that I can be a channel for something rather than razzle dazzle you with what I know, right? So I think that's the difference for me. I just allow myself to be clearer listening, and that sparks ideas rather than here's what all I have to say and I'll come to you and say it, and then I'll have to think of the next thing I'm going to say.
Right. Right.
It's subtle, but I feel like that's where it shows up.
And what I love about the way that you work with clients, because I'm a client of yours, is we're working on my memoir, which has some very dark stuff in it. And you get really present with the way that you pull that out of a client, out of, you know, the people that you work with, because I've noticed it with myself in working with you. How in the work that you do, that's very intuitive in editing books, in mapping out books. What are some of these, I don't know if I want to use the word strategies, but what are some of the processes that you have noticed have really improved since you've gone plant-based?
Energy, I think that is one. Again, just to loop back to what we were saying before, just being present and trusting that. I think I work out in the morning and I don't eat till noon, and then I eat something really nourishing. And I just think it brings, like this morning, it's noon now, and I feel like I've had a wonderful, full vibrant day of working on stuff for clients already. And I feel like it's it it's a clarity and a connection and a level of energy. I think that's what it brings.
Nice, nice. And now the meditation you talked about in your meditation is when it came to you to not eat meat anymore. What are some of your meditative practices that you could share with others that would help them to get more clarity on what kind of eating is most appropriate for them?
Yeah, believe me, I did not expect that to come through meditation. So God only knows.
God on those meditations.
You never know what kind of nudges will come from meditating. So fasten your seatbelt on your meditation cushion. I think okay, here's the connection. Again, we just are stimulated and we jump up and look at our phones and start comparing ourselves before we're even fully awake. You're looking at somebody's weekend or somebody's amazing ski trip or somebody's fabulous roast beef that they made last night or whatever. We're forcing ourselves to digest so much mental information, plus food takes a ton of our energy to digest. And I think that's the other thing, is you have much more energy for your life when you're not digesting all the time. So in the morning, I just go upstairs. I don't eat anything, have a cup of tea and get quiet for 15 or 20 minutes. And then I generally just follow that with 15 minutes or so of writing and what I'm hearing, what I'm listening to from my dreams, ideas that pop in my head. And it's just, again, just being present to yourself. We are just so checked out. And I count myself in that category.
Oh, absolutely.
Spent my life thinking I was amazingly present, but I was a million miles ahead of you and thinking. And so to me, it's about presence and listening. So I think that's, to me, if we get really simple with meditation, I have a timer that bell rings every 5 minutes. That's all. It's like a Vipassana meditation.
Nice, nice. Well, I have my morning ritual, and it includes some meditation time. It includes reading something spiritual. I'm reading a book by U.S. Anderson right now, The Magic in Your Mind, I think it's called. And it's really about the thoughts that we have and what we do with those thoughts. And, one of the things that I find so interesting are the people that say that they want to live more consciously. They say they want to be plant-based, but then they create all these barriers for themselves by saying, oh, it's so tough, or I can't give up meat. I have a family member that her doctor said, you need to quit meat because you've got gout that's just out of control. You're ready for a heart attack. You're ready for this. And she was like, I'd rather die than give up meat. And I thought, well, you're going to, that's kind of a fact of life. But what do you say to those people who they know you're plant-based, they come to you and they ask, how do I get started on a plant-based lifestyle? And you share that with them, and then they come up with all these excuses. What's your response to that?
Well, I truly don't have a lot of people coming to me and saying, I want to do that. I've got to be honest. There's not a line out my door of those. But, well, my stepdaughter's one who went, I guess just from modeling my behavior, I never really talked to her about my eating. But she decided to do the same with her boyfriend right before she had a baby. So she went vegetarian, let's just say. She was one with the cheese. I find people can give up meat a lot easier than the cheese. And now we know that the opiate receptors in the brain, the same ones get activated by cheese.
Right.
If I had a big hunk of mozzarella, I don't know if I'd stop, right? You know what I mean? I think
I do.
There's something about cheese. So I generally find it's with people and cheese. And I truly believe I'm not going to ever convince anybody, because this is a big decision.
Right.
It requires a lot. So I think we're just a living laboratory, and we owe it to ourselves to experiment with how we feel when we do different things, right? To me, that's like a nice big side benefit of being human. We get to be a lab. What happens if I do this? What happens if I do this? How do I feel? And it's, I didn't really groove on giving up cheese, but I tried it. And then I was like, it's not so hard. Yeah. So I guess, I don't know if that answers the question, but what do
it does.
say to those people?
What do I say to them?
Yeah.
Well, in that I have a Facebook group, I have the YouTube channel, I've written a book already called The Beginner's Guide of Plant-Based Eating, and really seeing that there's an urgency to some of these decisions. I try to be compassionate and patient because it did take me a long time to finally come to understand how wonderful this way of living is. But other times it's like, there isn't any time to waste. I mean, we can look at some of the recent happenings in the world, and Luke Perry passing away from a stroke. Who's to say that wasn't based on some of his eating? I mean, I don't want to pass judgment on that, but you look at the obesity rate in our country and in our world. You look at the rising heart disease, cancer, diabetes, all of that, and people have a choice. They can live a quality of life that is minimal at best, or they can live a quality of life that is just so off the charts amazing. And if somebody asks me, then I'm going to give them my opinion. But I'm not going to walk up to them in the grocery store. They probably see me looking at their cart and going, really? But, and that's where, I say judgment is my religion, because I can be very judgmental. But I think if somebody comes to me and says, well, what do I do? And I give them that information, it's the same in business. If somebody's hiring you to advise them, you owe it to them to give them the truth. And so, I try to tone it down as much as possible. I hear your dog, which actually, let's move on to a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, the compassion to animals around this way of living.
Yes, I guess.
Do you need to let your dog out?
Animals. Let me just let somebody in here. I'll be
okay. Oh, Ian. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about the compassion to animals with this way of living, because, I think that's where some people, they either don't know how cruel the whole factory farming is, or even if they know, they go, oh, don't, because that'll make me lose my appetite for meat. Well, that's kind of the idea, Yeah. So have you noticed that your compassion for animals has actually changed since going plant-based?
Oh, my God. I always had a ton of compassion to animals and completely segmented out the animals I was eating. And I was one of the people saying, well, the cow had a wonderful life. It was grass-fed. And I think I've had that conversation with you.
Yeah.
People that say, well, the cow had one bad day.
That's a hell of a bad day.
If your uncle was murdered, you probably wouldn't say, well, my uncle had a great life, one bad day.
One bad day. Yeah.
We might not say that. So, I feel like now I can look an animal in the eye. And I don't think I had really the right to before. Anyway, what about you and animals?
It's so interesting because it's the same thing. I really lived in silos of like, okay, I can say I'm compassionate, and yet now that I'm really living this way of life, I see where there was a lot of hypocrisy. And that's another area that I try not to be judgmental, because I work within the pet industry, and there's a lot of people that are so into animal rescue. They're, they are dog trainers, whatever they may be. And yet I go to a conference and they're serving beef and chicken, and I'm like, okay, there's a disconnect here. I remember the first animal conference I went to, I was shocked at how much meat was consumed. And I was like, something's not right here. And so that's an area that I hope to have some impact and raise awareness. And I think part of this is the ability to raise the awareness, which really comes back full circle to what you do for a living. As a book editor, do you work with people who write books about plant-based eating or animal compassion? Is that a goal of yours?
Oh, I would love to do more of that. People have that as mentions in some of their books, but I haven't done a straight-on book.
Well, then we'll just have to change that. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have to change. Because actually earlier today I was on the phone with Lynn Klippel, on Zoom with Lynn Klippel, and we were talking about a project, and your name obviously came up as somebody that would be doing the editing to this. But it's going to be a book all about plant-based lifestyle. So be watching for that. Yeah,
Super cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I feel like, the more angles we can bring in, I love that you're talking to people about how it's affecting them in all different ways.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The more we can look at that, the more powerful the message becomes. And people
Absolutely.
don't see it as just you're trying to take away my meat. It's almost like a Second Amendment thing.
I just did a blog post today on the whole issue of when people say they're giving up something. It's like, instead of looking at it as giving up, look what you're embracing, look what you're bringing into your life. And
Yeah.
before I forget, how do people get in touch with you? And what's your web address? How do they reach out to you if they want to talk to you about editing a book for them? And are there certain types of books you won't edit?
Ooh. Um, well, my website is intherightplace.com, and right is WRITE. And I'm happy to jump on the phone. On my website is a link to schedule a chat with me, and people are welcome to use that. And I would love to talk about any book aside from fiction. I just don't edit. I adore fiction, and I love fiction, and I write fiction, but I'm not a fiction editor.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
memoirs, self-help, inspiration, that's kind of my jam.
Okay. Okay. And soon to be plant-based, there you
And
go.
plant-based books.
Yeah.
Well, she's not plant-based. I was going to say I did do one cookbook. She's more a vegetarian. So
Okay. Okay. So awesome. Awesome. So as we get ready to wrap this up, what are some things that you could advise to people, again, who are thinking of going plant-based? What will they experience in their life by making that choice on a very conscious level?
yes, consciousness, I would say, number one. Presence, connection with, oh my God, everything I eat is potentially nourishing me on all levels. Oh my gosh, preparing this food is so beautiful. Wow, I'm grabbing something from the earth and bringing it right to my table. To me, that direct experience with food is huge. Plus, where I really feel it is, I love doing on the carbon footprint. I don't know if you've done your carbon footprint. There's a lot of calculators online where you enter in all the details about your lifestyle, the size of your home, what you drive, and what you eat. And
Huh.
if you take off meat, dairy, sugary snacks, your carbon footprint goes way down. So to me, that's a huge motivator.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
I
Yeah.
love.
It's interesting when you look at what's happening to the earth, and like all the storms that we're dealing with, the fires, the just natural disasters, and the people that still refuse to say that we're either in global warming, climate change, whatever you want to call it, and that carbon footprint, that meat is one of the biggest contributors to that, the whole factory farming. And people can live in denial all they want, but the evidence is there. So, well, Madeleine, it has been delightful having this conversation with you. I just adore you. I love the work that you do. And my goal is to help you get your message out there in the greatest way possible, so more and more people will realize that working with you would be a great idea. You do something called book mapping. Tell us a little bit about that so that people know that you might be a solution for them to help them figure out what they're going to write.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. I adore you, and I love your book and your message, and I love that you have ventured so boldly into this plant-based world.
Thank
And
you.
you're such a model for us all. So book mapping is really looking at what you are here to say. What am I here to say? And what's a container for my message right now? What would deliver my message to my reader in the most efficient, joyful, cool way that's really me? And how can I produce my book, create my book with with joy and ease and grace and bring it across the finish line. And that's really my goal with my clients, to come up with a map so that they can head into the wilderness of writing a book with a plan and knowing where they're going at every split in the path, and then
I love that.
to the other side of the woods and have a book in their hand.
I love that, because it is a wilderness, and to have a good guide taking you through it. I mean, I'll tell you that having you as my guide on my memoir has been phenomenal. And I just so appreciate all your knowledge, all your intuition, everything that you're doing. And again, it's Madeleine Eno, E-N-O, at In the Right Place. Right is W-R-I-T-E. And we will have all this information below the video on YouTube, so people can reach out to you. They can go to your website. They can find you on social media. And Madeleine, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy editing schedule and busy book mapping schedule. I so appreciate you, and I just love what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. Right back at you. I so appreciate you.
Thanks.